when you are dealing with someone, you need to ask them for consent first, because you don't want to ask someone if they need help and then proceed to help them when they didn't really say yes to it, and now you have bigger issues rather than just their injury. So first and foremost, when you are coming to someone and you're gonna apply anatomic splint, there you go, anatomic splint, you need to ask the person, address them, say, hello, are you okay? Do you need help? My name's Jason Conrad. I'm certified in emergency care and CPR, all that. So first, if they give you consent, obviously, then that's when you proceed. So you would, an anatomic splint is usually if someone broke their leg and they can't really move their whole body. So first and foremost, you have to support the injured area. So if it is their leg, you gotta support it and make sure it's level, so that they kind of don't have to deal with just the regular resistance your legs have when keeping them flat on the floor and stuff like that. So you want to make sure that they're okay. You want to support above and below the injury, and after that you want to feel for if they have feeling in their toes, let's say, if they can move their toes, good, it's not too serious. If not, then the issue might be deeper. But ask them, can you feel this? You move their toes, you ask them if they can move their toes. Feel for warmth. So if this skin's usually warm, so if you feel the injured area and it's pale, it's cold, doesn't seem like there's a lot of color, then you know that they lost circulation. So there might be, the chances of there being a fracture or a break are pretty high, or something along those lines, because usually you just wouldn't have that. All right. So when the person's legs are on the ground, you must first and foremost obviously elevate it, make sure they're okay, but take my bandage today is my towel, my triangular bandage. You take a good amount of them, you fold them, and you place them. So let's just act like this is folded. All right. Place them above the legs, above the injured area, and also below. And you have to make sure there's a good amount of them, because that's going to be key to if their legs are properly secured so they're not moving too much, because this is in place of a stretcher basically. So you don't want them moving too much. So you would go like this, over, under. You would make sure everything's lined up. After everything's lined up, you place the uninjured area next to the injured area. So if they hurt their left leg, put their right leg back over here. And that's when you would proceed to tie the triangular bandages securely around the legs. So you want to make sure they're not too tight, obviously, because if they're too tight, then you're going to see more circulation loss. It's going to be more detrimental than helpful in the end. So you want to make sure they're sturdy, firm. You want to make sure they're not moving too much. And then once they are secure, that's when you ask them, are you okay? You check for warmth again, because a soccer shoe in the place, you can't really get that same feeling. So that's also very crucial. If someone hurt their leg, after you do tie the bandages around their legs for the anatomic splint to keep them in place, you want to just make sure that nothing's too tight, that they're comfortable. You want to make sure their shoes are off and their socks are off, because sometimes when you do have an injury like that, it's harder to move your toes and do those simple things. So after checking for warmth again and to see if they're okay, hopefully paramedics will arrive soon, and that's how you apply an anatomic splint. The next splint on the list is a soft splint. Okay. So, same drill. For the soft splint, it's gonna be more your ankle. It's not really gonna be your whole leg. You don't really have to wrap every single part to make sure you're not moving. You start off the same way you would as always. Address them, get consent. My name is Jason Conrad. I'm CPR certified. Alright. This will have to be my bandage. So after you get your consent, you make sure they're okay. You ask them how they are, if anything else is an issue. You support the injured area above and below, as always. So if it is their ankle, you just want to make sure that the way the feet and the legs are set up, when you put your leg fully down, it affects your ankle and it makes you flex it and it makes you move it a lot. So you want to make sure it's supported to where you don't really have to deal with all of that. And afterwards, that's when you check for feeling of warmth, feeling of color. After that, you same thing. You ask them if they can move their toes. You ask them if they can feel their toes. That's basically just checking to see if it's a break, to see how serious it is. No circulation around there, pale skin, cold to the touch. That usually means there's a break or something around there. The next step is you place several triangular folded bandages above and below the injured area. So, if it is your ankle, what you're gonna do is you're gonna take a bunch of your triangular bandages above and below, like always, and you're gonna make sure that it goes around the whole injured area. Let's say this is my triangular, not my triangular, another one of my triangular bandages. You make sure it's around the ankle, make sure it's properly secured. That's when you would have multiple bandages around here to make sure the ankle is not moving too much. Afterwards, you tie all the bandages securely. And after tying all the bandages, you want to just make sure, let's say this is my bandage, it's all tied up. That's when you would, again, if they already didn't have their shoes off, because you should have checked for that to see if they can move their toes and stuff like that, to see if you can move their toes. You would recheck all of that to see if there's still limited circulation, to see if it's pale, see if it's cold, see if they regained any feeling to their feet or any feeling to their toes since you have bandaged them up, and then apply the splint. And after that, the paramedics should be on the way. And yes, that is how you apply a soft splint. Alright, lastly is the rigid splint. So, to apply the rigid splint, usually that's for around here, so your wrist, your forearm. You could sometimes break this bone. You have to give consent, of course. You go through the motions, you say your name, make sure you're speaking clearly. People might be disoriented after an injury like this. They might not hear you clearly. So you want to make sure that's going good. And then after you get consent, that's when you check for feeling, warmth, color. Usually someone who broke their wrist or something, they're going to have it like this. You're going to see limited circulation. It's going to be cold, pale to the touch. That's what you're checking for. That's how you know if there's a break, if it's serious. Just how severe it is. If you notice that they say they hurt this part and now it's pale all the way up to the forearm, that might be another indication. But to start off, you always want to support it. So you're gonna get a board under the injured area and the joints that are above and below the injured area. Alright, so let's say this is your board. This is your board. You want to make sure if it's the wrist, usually it's like this. You want to make sure it's supporting everything. Give their hand a little leeway so they can still use it. You want to do this above, and you want to also do it, above. And you also want to do it below, just to ensure that people aren't moving it, to ensure that the joints are in place, because you don't want to keep having them move their hand and their wrist, and next thing you know, they further aggravate their injury. So after applying that, that's when, sorry, one more time. After applying that, that's when you would get the bandage, and you would tie several fully triangular bandages above and below. Same as the other types of splints. You want to make sure it's secure. You want to make sure it's not too tight, but you want to make sure it's also just good enough so it could keep everything in place. Above, below, on top of the splints. And after, that's when you would recheck, obviously, for just making sure that the rigid splint immobilizes the elbow, so that you can't be doing too much of this, just aggravating the injury more. You gotta recheck for color, warmth, if they have feeling, all of that. You could also, to make it a lot more efficient, you are going to, after they are binded, splinted, you still want to keep it sturdy and solid. So that's when you would bind the arm to the chest, kind of like the sling we did. So this one could be, this one could be just like the other one, goes under, one side over here, one side over here, tie in the back, and that's when you could keep everything in place.